Anthony, sit back here by me right now.
I'm gonna spend the night anyway.
Sit right there.
You're not spending the night down here?
Yes.
Quit being a smart aleck, too.
Why? Spend the night down here.
You did too.
No, I didn't. We're gonna spend the night down here.
Are you ready?
Yeah. Ready as
Anthony, back here by me, please.
Looks Spider-Man. I'll split two more things. Peter Parker. Oh, Norman Osborn with the mask that talks.
Turn around.
And J. Jonah Jameson. And J. Jonah Jameson. And James. Oh yeah, I have that. He bangs his head on J. Jonah Jameson. Oh what? I can't.
AJ, you're next.
Oh, you're lucky.
Tyler, Corey, can you put back tennis and get the picture?
I got the real Spider-Man and the real Green Goblin.
Tyler and Andrew.
Emily, he's got more presents, honey.
I know. Ow. Okay. I'm gonna open Patrick's.
watching Spider-Man tonight.
Patrick's. Take a picture.
You may
Patrick,
not
he's
be.
opening
You keep
his
acting this way.
Patrick. We're actually giving it out, but. Patrick.
Whose party is
You
this,
gotta
Anthony?
sit by him.
wants to watch it?
He's
Whose
over
party is
there.
it?
I mean, they can sit right
It
here.
acts like it's his.
Cool. What are they?
What is it?
Harry Potter trading card game. Oh man, I don't have this. I have the other one. And Harry
Tyler, I
Potter
can't shoot through you, buddy.
Harry Potter trading card game. And then I can.
Get over next to Patrick.
Booster pack.
I dare you to get him.
Are you tired?
Don't get him with the ball.
Watch out.
No, I go like this.
Hey, I've got an idea.
That's what you do.
These and this is
Is the hamster dead? What? Is the hamster
This is
dead?
real rare.
The hamster will be dead. Then I don't do this. Because if I did, because it would be blown up on the floor.
Hey, is this from Deej?
Yep. And then that's all we have.
Yeah, was it 2 years ago that we went to Buca de Beppo?
Last year.
Okay, last year
Tyler,
DJ got him a very
Keep that
good
close,
present.
please.
Laser tag.
You know what
Which we
Anthony
lost
did?
everything.
While you were downstairs, Andrew was in there.
He was in here and then he got out on that little bar and then I pulled this out and then fell out. And then I grabbed it by the skin like you do to put it in the ball. And then I went, hey Dad, look, and she was like, oh, what's that? And then I said,
Did you guys? It said
Oh, cool.
I'm trying to shoot me under all here in his view.
We can duel.
Thank you.
It's not really called duel. Whoops. Is it Yu-Gi-Oh? The back of this came off. They have the cards. Digimon Detector Card Game. Mommy, I'll open this for you. So you can get cards that. There's some more. Yeah. Look at you got. No, that's Bobby.
Hey, DJ, get up there with Andrew.
Oh, dude, it's heavy.
Hey, Deej. Okay.
There, Bobby! He comes over and hits the guy. Mom! In what? In that.
Oh, I don't know. Must have already been with that. Anthony,
still on
get up there with your brother. Emily, get up there with your brother.
The
Yeah, how do you want to get your picture?
Hey, DJ.
How about I do have presents with you guys? This is present. What he's done.
That way you don't have to get up.
Oh yeah, Andrew. This is the card comes with section. This is the Digimon section. This is the Crash Air Hockey section.
Look, I have both of these and this card.
Spider-Man section.
You do? Let me see. I have this card and both of these cards. I know. Man, this card. Look at. Okay,
Where?
this one's heavy. Look at. Come here.
I love you.
Look at. Come here. Come here. I want to show you something.
You can't see
See, here are all three colors.
You got the real because it's 12, 11. This might be a larger popcorn. This might be a big giant popcorn.
For a real big microwave.
Another Spider-Man, Spider-Man! Spider-Man cereal? Oh, I love Spider-Man. We can watch that tonight. Spider-Man the movie, we can watch it tonight. Yeah, my favorite kind of cereal. Yes!
video.
I own it. Yay! Yeah! 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 Now can you open your teeth again? Yeah!
Dude, it's not exciting.
Yeah, man! Congratulations!
Wait,
Congratulations! You had no Spike the
Okay, Andrew gets him a stand-up coffee.
Look at the front. I know.
Look at the front.
You want to take it?
Awesome, it's the poster!
Andrew.
Andrew's over here.
Can I open it?
Andrew, get him a stand-up coffee.
Here, you hold the cereal. Yeah,
I need to be
Come
quiet.
here, bud.
You're here in the middle.
Mom, just there's more. There's
Get a picture, Anthony.
I was just explaining myself to him, Brian.
No, these are
Anthony.
I got a first edition pack. In this.
Hang on.
Wait a minute, one more.
I would brought my Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but
Anthony.
the Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
Anthony.
I'm getting that.
No.
This is
Smile.
body head.
Smile.
Stop! I have a hologram.
When you're ready, let me know, Anthony.
I have all the.
Look at the camera.
All my cards of all my cards.
Andrew, put it down.
I have all my cards. Watch this. Can I show you what cards you got? See what cards you got?
Hey, Andrew. Andrew, why don't you let DJ see what cards you got?
Dad, the thing I don't understand about this is that it has the opposite posters on every disc.
Okay. Go do your cake.
Ready, Drew?
What did you guys?
Drew, your cake.
I know. Why? Okay, wait. Oh, I have that guy.
Hey guys, we can look at the cards later. We're doing cake.
Okay, guys. Andrew.
Guys, we have
Daddy can't.
It's my birthday season.
But Daddy can't take these.
a candle lit, guys. We're gonna do birthday cake.
Hang on, I'm gonna turn the lights out.
Oh, you're done. Let me sit there. Here are all your cards.
Can someone move the Spider-Man cereal, please?
Can I do it if I get in the kitchen?
Hey, I'm fine. I'm zoomed in.
Okay, wait. Is everybody in here?
Yes.
Except for Sleepyhead. And Anthony. Where's Anthony's here?
Anthony, my brother. I'm like, get your Alright, guys ready to sing? It's really late at night. It's 12:20 at night.
It is his birthday.
It is your birthday, Drew.
Right.
Officially.
It's 12:20.
12:20. It's the next day. You have 12 hours and 18 minutes and you're born.
And I'm not. And guess what? I'm not yet you reborn. You're welcome for it this time.
Okay, ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Cha-cha! Happy birthday, dear Andrew. Cha-cha-cha! Mom, look at me.
No, I can see fine.
Let's sing again. Nana was in the
I don't
way.
like this.
Happy birthday to you. Cha cha cha.
Happy birthday.
Dear Andrew. Cha cha chee. Happy birthday to you. Cha cha chee. Wait, Drew.
Oh my
I'm gonna relight it.
Drew, we're gonna relight it so you can actually blow it out, okay?
Watch out, please. Okay, Mom, I'm gonna get one this time.
One.
Excuse me.
1, 2, 3, stop!
Drew, blow it out, okay?
Wish for something.
Wait, gotta blow it, Drew, and I'm gonna take
He's
it.
wishing for something.
Okay, whoa.
I know what I'm doing. Okay, and where does it go?
Wait.
Make sure every single tone
You
you
ready?
Go! Did you wish for something? I know.
Casey's birthday.
Happy
Birthday to you.
Cha-cha-cha. Happy birthday to
Silent.
you.
I can't see through you, buddy.
Cha-cha-cha.
Happy birthday, dear and true.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Okay, Drew.
You
Okay.
smell like a monkey, and you look like a deer.
Is that okay with the window open?
Exactly. I know, but it's a two costume set. Hey, I saw that one. I was gonna get it for you. I knew it wasn't actually gonna be like that. Yeah. And then you could like kind of. Okay. Okay, I'm opening this 1 second. I'm opening smallest or biggest. Just gonna open it. Look at what this is. You're gonna love it. Yep. How much did you wrap this thing?
Just tear it open.
Alright.
You're a strong boy. Tear it open.
Star Wars episode 2. That's how good the Okay, let's see what this is.
I know what all of them are. This
I
one's
do
even
too.
better.
Of course I do. So do
Oh,
I.
Anthony, yeah. Anthony.
Lord of the Rings 46.
Of course, you can't watch them till after Christmas.
Alright, hold that, Carol. Hold it up. Hold up your present.
Hold it up, Drew.
Here's a biggie. Okay, Aunt Emily and Aunt.
I know which one I want to watch this afternoon. Don't sit
Which
on
one?
me. I have to.
Why not?
It's school.
See, I don't know that because like I said,
No.
I just recorded it and I've
Yeah.
not viewed it yet.
That's right already.
It's not through the whole film. There's spots,
Sure.
you know.
Well, and that's the way it would go.
Yeah.
Guess who gave me?
Someone set me up and wrapped a present just like I do.
We started doing that, just buying the
Yeah.
brown paper. And
It's cheaper.
It is, and it's fun.
And we draw
And you can
it on
decorate.
We draw it on it.
They draw on it. And I
Okay.
got white butch paper.
Can I start?
I think it's safe for you to start.
We think it's your birthday or something? God.
Don't
How do I get this thing?
just pull it off.
Yeah,
over
pull it
the
up
corner.
and then you can untie it later.
We'll untie it later. Just pull it off on the corner.
That's pretty cool.
There you go.
Let me see if that ring will fit me. That looks like my size.
He almost fell for
It
it.
just about fell for it.
Is that the ring? Does it have writing on it, Tammy?
Yeah.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, it has to be right.
Let me look at it. Sure.
Anthony has it. Anthony has
Oh,
it. Dude, what is that?
The Hobbit Companion.
Ooh.
right.
Tim, you look at everything with him? Look at your picture with him?
Aww.
The Hobbit. They're thinking of making it into now that Lord of the Rings has done so good, they're talking about making that into a mini-series.
Oh, are they really?
Yeah, with the same production crew, same production company doing it.
Hey, you guys ready? That's good. Terry, your sweater almost matches our wall.
Yeah.
Quick,
I'm not gonna show up.
Let me see that.
Yeah, you did. That's good. Yes, yeah.
You like that, Andrew?
It's cool.
Yeah.
Now this one, Grandma says you have to read the card first.
What, does it give me hints?
I don't know. She just told me. She did all the wrapping. She just told me what to tell you.
Instructions.
So.
Ow.
Oh, that's stuff on you?
No.
Oh. What are you owling over? Oh, your
She's
itch.
got dry skin.
No, I mosquito bite.
Huh.
Isn't that cool?
She's okay with that herself.
It's kind of a brainy book, but I figured you could
You know
handle
what
it.
happens when you
She's better
close your
about it,
eyes,
so
make
she-
the way
There's a-
you
look
look
at
at the
this,
candles
Brad.
really hard. You get frosting on the wall.
Say it again. I'm talking. I'm sorry.
You know what happens when you close your eyes, make a wish and blow out your candles really hard? You get frosting on the wall. Happy birthday.
That am I
Look
invisible?
like he's close. They're sporty. Look in the pocket for another treat. He loves you. Of course.
Brad, look.
Yo, is that funny when I said my
Isn't that cool?
That is great.
They're gonna be
Wow.
fancy.
It's supposed to
what?
work.
Spelled
Hey,
Well, it did
it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Oh, you needed another one though,
Nice.
Drew.
I know.
We don't think he's got
Okay, I'm getting the real tree.
the real tree.
Okay, let's see. Let me guess.
Not
I
this
think I have a guess.
They smell good.
I bet it's 9 cents.
9 cents, maybe 90 cents if he's lucky.
What is
Oh,
that?
it's a
What is
check.
that?
Gift certificate to Bob Evans.
All right.
Now let's see what's in the other pocket.
Another-
See, I think there's any in here.
Hold that up, let me see that.
Hey,
I want to get your picture with Grandpa.
Are you taking me to Bob Evans with that?
Sure.
Oh, wow.
That was easy,
But you didn't hear the other remark.
What do you say?
He said, no, I'm kidding. I think that's probably everything.
How much is it for?
There's $5.
$5. All right.
Kidding, I-
Get off!
Hey, Anthony.
Here!
Anthony.
I'd rather have it on my left hand.
So it looks like
What?
you're married.
Cool.
No.
Hey, let's see if I can disappear like Bilbo! I'm kidding.
Where are you? I bet he doesn't show up on that camera anymore, does he?
Nope, he's not in there.
Grandpa, can we
You have to take your ring off so we can see you.
Get over there by Grandpa.
How come you're looking straight at it?
Because I know where he's at. I can see the envelope.
Guys ready? Andrew?
How come you're staring right at his face?
I'm not. I'm staring at the
Alright.
envelope.
Okay, I'm opening this.
Our card is behind you, crush it.
Yeah, that was right.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, we made the card out of glass.
did you shampoo your hair?
Yeah, we need the card out of the box.
There you go.
See how he opened that? That was
Who's this
great.
from?
Pepperoni.
Who's it from?
Who's it from?
And Poppy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
8, 9.
3,
Got $9.
4, 9, 10. $10.
No.
9. 9.
Look,
Read the front of the card.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Oh,
9, 10.
it does look like 10.
Okay, Drew, now you can take that and your gift certificate and take us out to Bob Evans tomorrow for lunch.
I knew you were going to say that.
I'll stay here then.
Birthday to Andrew. 4 plus
Okay, go
5.
ahead.
9. Poppy and Anna wish your grandson
Anyways,
9th birthday.
you can't drive home then.
Of you.
Huh?
Then you can't drive home.
That you are.
I came with Grandpa. Oh yeah, you're right.
It is our
I'd have
happiness
to take the broom home, wouldn't I?
in the Christ Center.
Yeah, you can take that home.
And train you in the.
I wish they had things that you could buy that look like
brothers,
Mr.
sisters who will love you also. Our prayers for a wonderful night, dear.
Surprised they haven't made like a
God,
scooter that
good
looks
health,
like that.
good times, good friends, and opportunities for
Wait.
lots of good deeds.
I'm surprised they haven't made a
Love
jetpack
you.
that looks like that.
There's
It's like you put on a jetpack and have a gun.
I don't know.
Whoa, that's good, Drew.
Yeah.
What do you
Like
say?
Quidditch.
You're welcome.
I think it'd be really
Have a
cool.
good birthday, then.
I was going to be the speaker. This is from all of us.
I'd like to be the guy.
It's like
What's the
you got chocolate
goalkeeper
icing
called?
on
Keeper.
it. Did you?
You said you're a keeper. Got a hint?
Don't be a smart aleck, Anthony.
Oh, I guess I did.
I got a big mole. Never touch the glass.
I got a big ball.
Don't
touch
it.
Do you guys ever open that?
Yeah, but we closed the,
Look how he opens those cards. Those are great. I love it, Drew.
You gotta get to it, don't you, bud?
Please make me be money.
It's from Mommy and Daddy. We spent all our money on your
Oh,
party.
you're totally cool. Just like you. We love you so much. You are so special. Happy night. Love, Mommy, Daddy, Emily, Anthony.
What do you say to everybody?
Thank you. Happy birthday, dear Andrew.
Happy birthday to you.
Special day. Birthday number 2.
So we get cake and ice cream.
Happy birthday to you. Ta ta ta. Happy birthday to you. Ta ta ta.
Happy birthday, dear Drew, Stinky. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you, Andrew.
Drew, don't use your nose.
Happy birthday, Andrew.
Come on, Drew.
Have to stop smoking.
It's gonna take you 4 years to get your wish.
Here we are the day after Thanksgiving. And instead of going shopping, we're decorating. Right, Anthony?
Yep.
Right, Drew?
Yes.
Emily, what are we doing today?
We're putting our tree up
Yeah, baby.
and we're putting our ornaments on
Yep.
it.
Oh yeah.
Okay, Anthony.
Baby. What?
Here comes Mommy.
Hey, Daddy.
What were you doing, Mommy?
Let's go bathroom.
He's going poopy.
Mom, where's the hang?
All right. What's the
I thought it was 1, but 2.
Where do we put our?
Here I sat all broken hearted. I came to poop, but only.
farted?
Mom, you can put mine.
Don't ring that too loud. I don't want it to break.
This one on. Is this mine?
Right?
Yes.
Right.
Mom, you can put one of mine on. I can't get it on. Andrew, here's mine. Mom, where's that box with food? Hi.
Didn't you guys do this song last year?
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Didn't you change the lyrics to it?
Yes.
Merry
Who sang the solo?
Christmas.
I put the drum on top of his head.
Who sang the solo?
Mom,
The women sang it.
Mom, this is mine. That's Emily's and that's Anthony's. No, this is mine. No. Exactly this. No, look. I'm in the middle. Put mine up. I can't get it on. Here's one of the tickets for Spy Kids 2. And love came down at Christmas time. Where are the hanger things?
I don't know. Mommy's gonna have to find them. The hooks.
Oh, this is mine. I wish it was Christmas Eve today. I
Drew.
Not here.
This is our Christmas tree that we just put up, and it was fun. That's in his baseball ornament.
We're trying to find yours.
Yeah, we're trying to find mine. This is one
Can we use this then?
This is my favorite.
No, still unstable.
No, it's not. See what?
Yeah, see it?
No, because it's all the.
I like this one too.
See, it's too steepy.
Ha ha, yeah right.
It's shaking a little bit. Do you have a glass? Yes.
Porcelain.
Where's the? He got here.
Hi, my name's Emily. I love this part. Bye. Part 6. Thank you.
I don't know if I can.
Stand up on it. It'll be fine.
Hang on.
Let me see. Let me see what it looks like. Can I go?
Very pretty.
She's too big.
She got plastic under her dress.
Never too big.
Can I?
She's crooked.
Can I videotape?
Not done.
Hi.
DJ just got his tree up.
This is Emily.
Train set that goes
On Channel News. I'm sorry, but
I didn't tell you to do it like that.
let me videotape
There, Mom, that
some.
looks good, honey.
Can I videotape some, Daddy? Dad, can I
Tree.
Daddy. Dad,
What?
can I videotape some?
Anthony, let your sister videotape some.
Wait. Right up near to it.
now let me. Now let me.
I need to go. I need to let me zoom in your nose.
Let me unhook you. There.
We need to find Anthony's.
Now put your butt up to it. There's Emily's butt.
Let me videotape now.
Another videotape now.
I did. It's the exact same as my eye.
Anthony.
Let me see if it's the exact. Dad, look.
How can I look?
It's the exact same between both eyes.
Open it. Let.
There you go.
Say something, Anthony.
Hi. It's not Christmas Eve. It's Thanksgiving after Eve. Whatever.
It's the day after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's it.
Anthony, this is for your ornament. Right?
Yesterday we ate too much.
Charlotte?
No. Poop.
Charlotte?
Crud. Poop.
Charlotte?
Poop crud. Poop crud.
I can still see
Poop crud. Poop crud. Poop crud.
Ooh, you have a huge mouth. See? Look at me. Just, no, put it away from your eye. You allowed doing that? Oh, cool.
I turned on your music box.
That's yours.
You go like that and look down into it. Hello.
Go down a button.
Don't record anymore.
Yes. Ew, you have white teeth. Put your tongue up to it. I ugly tongue. Now your bottom teeth. I can't see them. Now, Mom, come here. Good. Ew. I'm videotaping Anthony. Look at my thumbnail. Nice. Put the thumb out. Thumbnail. Like my thumb? Thanks. No. No! Mom, talk into it. Gross, ain't it? I can't even see it. Gross, isn't it? Ew. Anthony. No. Yeah. You need nauseous. Put your butt up to it. How do you zoom in, Anthony? Anthony, how do I zoom in? Anthony, how do I zoom in? Anthony, but how do I zoom in? Put your butt up to it. Move your... Why zooming in? Move your hand a little bit. Just a little bit that way. Oh, cool. Is it angel? Does it mean angel? Like bullish? Not there. Now did it? Yes. Let me see. No, wrong. Did it look blue? No, it looks yellow or orange. Now it's good. Anthony, put your butt up to it. Does it look old-fashioned now? No, it's regular. Is it old-fashioned? It's like little squares. How about now? No. Is it old-fashioned now? Yeah, it's good. Black and white? Yeah, it's black and white. Merry Christmas, everybody, and have a very, very good year. Anthony, how do you get this off? Ew, now it's all orange. Now it's on. Let me see what color it shows. Oh, it's this one. Wait, let me see. Hey, I want to see it. Oh, something like that. Look at the Christmas tree. Cool enough. Wait, I haven't done all the picture effects yet. Get away. You put my eye there. You in on me.
No.
What?
Anthony, I think you've taped enough.
I haven't taped.
Have you haven't let her?
Well, I've taped a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit.
I didn't find it. There's a big styrofoam box.
Look at that.
Can you turn it off, guys? You're wasting tape now.
Oh my gosh, and look at Mom. Let me see you.
Your dad.
Oh my gosh. What color's my tongue? Blue. Let me see what color your tongue is.
Was it heavy, Dad?
Oh man. Let me see. Mom, your shirt is orange.
Turn it off, please.
What? orange. Hey, now you're blue, and
Emily, I think Daddy asked you to turn that off.
I wanna.
I remember him asking you to turn it off.
But let me videotape a little
Emily?
more. A little more.
No.
you want to go ahead and come on up. favorite things. I really enjoy it. It's a plaque. It says, "Some people come into our lives and quickly go. Some stay for a while and leave footprints on our hearts, and we remember this thing. You'll be in my hearts too." The Sacrifice of Praise. Stories behind the great praise and worship songs of all time. That's great. I look forward to that in devotional time. And then there's a card. It's a gift certificate to Berea. Thank you so much. You didn't need to do that. A lot of you have already given me something. Thank you so much. Well, I was going to pray, but now I can't for the reception. Paul, if you would. And then there's one last clip I'll show you of the Messiah to end it, and then you can go eat and enjoy yourselves. Thank you so much for the gift. Thank you for sharing your children with me and letting me be a part of their lives.
Let's all stand together.
In fashion that really brings the greatest results.
Underlying the process, the tools, the techniques, and the skills and so on, I assume is a body of client information. That's basis upon which you're working, I guess. So could you tell us a little bit about what it is that you look for in the client information as a body of data? What it is that you're getting out of that?
You're absolutely right. It's the client, the historical data that we have on the clients that is absolutely the most predictive and powerful tool for designing cost-effective treatment strategies. The kinds of data that are typically used can be anything from credit histories that are available from external credit agencies. This can give us information on the extent to which other creditors are evaluating this particular client as creditworthy and how much credit they have or have not extended to that customer, as well as the customer's payment performance with respect to those creditors. That information can be very useful. Secondly, and often more powerful, is the internal records that we may have about each of our clients. We have found historically that the most powerful predictive information is the historical performance of that particular client as captured in our own experience with that client, as opposed to as captured in the experience that other creditors may have with that client. Sometimes, though, the combination of the two can be more powerful than either alone.
Typically, how many sources of data are you looking to combine, be it archives with present day information or multiple sources from different databases? What's been
The analyst's answer to that is the more data, the better. The available data is our starting point in the analytical search for which elements of this data set are most predictive or indicative or useful in terms of customizing treatment strategies to particular segments. So the more the better, and we can filter out, use the statistical techniques to filter out the data that doesn't have information content, useful information content, from that which does. So the more the better. Typically, though, if we have historical records about the customer's prior, I keep saying customer, if we have historical records about the client's prior payment performance with respect to our particular agency, and that tends to be most useful. What was their liability, and what was their payment performance on that liability, looked at in a historical, looking at previous payment periods, and the further back we can go, the better. In that it gives us, as I was saying, a greater richness of data sources to comb through in trying to identify that information which is most predictive.
Is there a minimum size of client information typically that you need in order to be able to develop the analysis to draw the discriminations?
The tools that we apply are most effective when applied on large portfolios. The portfolios that we have dealt with most commonly might involve anywhere from a few 100,000 to a few million clients. On the larger portfolios, we would often draw a sample rather than for model building purposes and prediction purposes. And those samples typically would be in the range of 10 to 15,000 clients, so that one could argue that a minimum size for the effective application of these techniques would be a portfolio that contained at least 10,000 individual client records.
The quality of the data, is that an issue?
Clearly that's an issue. The models that we build for segmenting, to help us segment the portfolio into different risk groups, are only as accurate as the data that we have. If the data going in to the model building effort is inaccurate, the predictions that the model provides will obviously be less reliable.
So are there steps that can be taken to remedy poor quality data, for example, or to I guess, fix it such that it might become relatively reliable?
Yes, there certainly are, and in fact, here at Bell Labs we have a group of people who have spent the last several years focusing on this particular area, and they divide that into, I guess, two key issues. One is the process by which the data is acquired, and the second is the storage and retention and maintenance of that. And whereas there are many other organizations that will come in and look at an existing database and focus only on the question of trying to clean up the inaccuracies in it, I think the advantage that the Bell Labs approach brings is it focuses on the processes by which that database is populated in the first place, so that we're not having to, if we can correct those processes, we can avoid, eliminate the task of having to come in year after year and clean up the data that's in there. It's the combination of those two processes that's effective. You probably want to be talking to Tom Redman if you want more cogent comments on that.
As I say, if not Tom and one of his people is going to be, I'm not sure whether we're going to have him in the tape or not, but there is a section on data quality and so on.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about the nature of the output, you know, what it kind of looks like, and then typically what your customers are doing with the output, how they're using it.
Okay. The output, there are actually several stages to the output. Probably the first stage is the creation of a risk prediction model. And that is, the creation of that model, as I've been describing, is very data intensive. We pore through, use statistical techniques to pore through the client portfolio and identify those records that are most predictive of future riskiness of that customer, where riskiness might be measured in terms of propensity to pay the liability that is due. The output of that step, that model building step, is basically a quantitative model that converts the historical client record information into a numerical score. And it does that conversion in such a way that the score is indicative of the future riskiness or the future propensity to pay for each client. So one output is the model itself. The second output is the ability, because of this process, is the ability to quantify within each risk group what's the relative risk of that group as measured in terms of the relative fraction of good payers versus poor payers in each group. And you might expect to see, coming out of that stage, a delineation of the segments, the risk segments, in a fashion that the lower risk segments, for example, might have 50 or 100 good clients, good paying clients for every poor paying client, whereas at the high risk end of the spectrum, there might be maybe one good client for every poor paying client, or less than that, perhaps 2 or 3 poor paying clients for every good paying client. So that's the output that we see from the modeling process. The second step is actually designing a treatment strategy around the risk prediction capability that the model affords us. And that's basically turning then, so now we have a numerical score and an assessment of the risk represented by each of the clients in our portfolio. What does that say about what sort of treatment strategies might be most cost effective for that particular client or for that particular risk group? So the second form of the output is the design of cost-effective treatment strategies. What action should we take and when? And that can be very different for different risk groups, as you might imagine. Lost my train of thought.
Well, I'll ask a follow-on question. No, I did have one.
I think I can continue from where I was, yeah. The second output is the design of treatment strategies that will be most cost effective for each of the risk groups, so that when we put the two together, we then have an ability to identify the relative riskiness of each client in the portfolio and a means of assigning them then to a cost-effective treatment strategy that's been customized for that particular risk group.
Now that theoretically could be used predictively. For example, within operational systems
Yes. That's a good point. That's the next step, is once we have our strategies in place so that we know what kinds of treatment actions we're going to take on the various risk groups. Because of the quantification that we've done, we also know the size of each of those risk groups. Combining those two factors allows us to predict the volume of activities, whether it's phone calls or letters or whatever it may be, what volume of each kind of activity is going to be required on a weekly or monthly basis, so that we can begin to estimate our resource requirements accordingly.
Okay, that's perfect. What I would like to do is just run back through pretty much the whole lot, so that
Okay.
we've got, so I've got choices as to which
Right.
ones to
Which take to take.
Good point.
What are the kinds of issues that are being confronted by organizations that come to you seeking assistance?
The organizations that seek us out tend to do so because they have very large client portfolios, large both in the terms of number of clients and in the dollar value that those clients represent. And the challenge that they're facing as uncollectible losses are on the rise are, how do we look at the clients that we have in this portfolio and determine which ones are risky, which ones are less risky, so that we can prioritize our treatment actions in a cost-effective way.
What are the typical approaches that you're taking to meet that requirement?
We bring 4 kinds of approaches to bear, and we try to do that in an integrated way. The first of those is problem solving, problem formulation, problem structuring capability. And by that I mean where we will come in and try to work with the organization to help them define more concretely what their objectives are and what they're trying to accomplish by coming to us in the first place. The second area is, once we're clear on what it is we want to accomplish, the second skill that we apply are statistical analysis capabilities, where we're using statistical techniques such as discriminant analysis or logistic regression, or more recently, out of the artificial intelligence community, neural network models, to be able to look at these large portfolios and identify which factors in those portfolios are in the client records in that portfolio are most indicative of the future riskiness of those customers. So analytical, statistical techniques or neural network models are the second capability that we bring to bear. Third is financial modeling. On top of being able to identify and separate risky from non-risky customers, we need to have some means of capturing the cost effectiveness of alternative treatment steps that might be taken, whether it's phone calls or letters or what have you. Each of those actions has a cost associated with it. Each of them has a different effectiveness, and those effectivenesses can vary depending on which risk group that we're talking about. So we need to be able to capture the economics of the collection process as a step in designing the right treatment strategy for each risk group. And the fourth then is an optimization capability, so that once we're able to identify the costs and effectiveness of alternative treatment strategies, we can use our optimization methods to identify or design the most cost-effective strategy customized for each risk group.
Can you give us an example of some of the kinds of strategies that are likely to be recommended?
Typically, treatment strategies at the risk group level will vary in terms of the degree of aggressiveness or the time frame between when various actions are taken. For the low-risk groups, a very mild treatment strategy tends to be most cost-effective. And in fact, one of our goals is to use the statistical capabilities to identify as large a population of low-risk accounts as we can, because those can be relegated to the relatively milder and lower-cost treatment strategies. Perhaps everything is done through the mail, sending appropriate sequence of letters at the appropriate time points. Can be very effective and inexpensive for a large population of relatively risk-free, but nonetheless delinquent clients. On the other extreme, for clients, that smaller set of the population, which really represents higher risk, we might discover that treatment strategies that involve earlier and perhaps more frequent telephone contacts are more cost-effective, even though the treatment strategy itself is more costly to implement. Its effectiveness in terms of capturing or regaining its effectiveness in terms of rehabilitating the clients from a delinquent state into a current state can be profitable because of the larger risk involved and the larger size of the balances represented.
What I had a question a second ago.
Maybe I can continue on the same thought. So one form of the output is to design treatment strategies that are relatively mild for the low-risk groups, not very intensive in terms of the types and number and cost of actions involved, and on the other hand, treatment strategies that are that might be more costly but more effective as a result for the higher risk groups. That's at the conceptual level. At the more specific level, we would get into looking specifically at what are the costs of each type of action, what is a natural form of progression of severity in terms of tones of the letters or types of phone calls that are made from one action to the next. And the output of this stage is the construction of an actual sequence of collection actions. What actions are we going to take and at what time points for customers in each of the different risk groups?
Data is the raw material in this, I guess, client data. What is it that you're looking for in the client data?
You're absolutely right. The starting point and the foundation for all that we do is looking very carefully and closely at the historical records that we have about each of the clients in the organization's portfolio. Those records might include typically information about the liability, the size of the liabilities that have been due, that are due presently as well as have been due in the past. Are the liabilities increasing or decreasing? We would also look at the frequency of delinquency and the maximum degree of delinquency that might have been realized in the past. How long has it been since the last payment was received? All of these issues relating to the prior payment performance, prior liability and payment performance experienced with that particular client.
I imagine in certain circumstances the quality of data is not as desirable, as reliable or as high as you may wish. You have techniques to handle this?
We always start out, once we have received an extract of the portfolio for model building purposes, we always start out with a scrubbing process to try to eliminate duplicate records, to identify records where to put in some testing mechanisms so that we can eliminate records that are clearly invalid, where the fields are populated with invalid data, so that we can are assured that the models that we're building are being built on reliable customer data. To the extent that the organization is keeping accurate and high-quality records to begin with, that really simplifies that step of the process, and in some cases can make doable some of these analyses and optimization approaches that might be not doable if the records are simply not there.
What sort of
Sorry, I'm
improvement?
going to have to change tape.
Sure. This part is going great. Response score thing. Maybe we want to draw that theme into it somehow and make that something. that comes out.
I'll pull it in there.
Yeah, that would be good. I'm going to have you introduce, so there's really no introductory comments, no questions. The only thing I'll ask you, I will make sure that I don't come over the top of you. If you could make sure that you don't do that to me also, because I want to be able to get a clean edit. I'm going to take myself out
Sure.
completely, most probably.
Well, that'll be new for me, but I'll try.
Okay. So we start off with how was it that CPM came to use artificial intelligence in this context?
Well, we've been in the direct response marketing arena for some time, and a problem that we have always had is one of identifying specific behavior, such as buying behavior, or behavior where someone will quit using a credit card or will default on a loan. So behavior prediction and analysis driven by database is something we've been doing for a long time. We look for other areas that this technology could be of value, and one that became real obvious, especially to NCR, was the use of it for tax compliance.
Yeah, I'll have to be careful not to move.
Well, you're over here. You're in good shape.
Yeah, here.
How's the volume and everything?
Volume seems to be just fine.
Just hunky-dory?
We can always adjust that in
Okay.
editing too, so
Good.
that's usually not a problem.
All right. Well, we should be able to get through two.
Okay, we're recording.
So, John, how did CPM come to use artificial intelligence in this context?
Well, we have been in direct response marketing for a number of years, and we are a leader in that industry. The problem in direct response marketing is trying to find people who will buy a product or service and predict behavior, and trying to eliminate those and not mail to those or solicit those who will not, and bother them, if you will. And we find out that this technique works to predict any behavior in creditworthiness or cases where credit cards need to be stimulated or activated. So we were looking through other techniques, and we found out that the solution that we were looking for was artificial intelligence as opposed to some of the other more traditional techniques.
Why is artificial intelligence the preferred mechanism for analyzing client data specifically?
Well, I think that you've come across a really main point, and that is the analysis of client data. If you take a look at techniques that are available today, the first one is statistics. And statistics as a body of mathematics is very unforgiving of faulty or missing data. And if you take the common database that's constructed from customer data and outside data sources today, you find that there are lots of, let's say, holes in it, if you will. Statistics also requires that you have a good statistician who understands just the tremendous amounts of different mathematical techniques and things like transfer functions, how to assemble it. And the problem is bad data, no statistics, statistician, so it becomes very difficult to solve. What we have today is a lot of data, but the data is not of always the highest quality. And so what we were looking for is a highly non-linear method that fits around space and curves very well, that doesn't require a statistician, and that really led us off into the area of neural networks and genetic algorithms and inference processing and some other areas.
How does the CPM process take advantage of, say, neural networks specifically? How much of the process is significant in the application?
Well, the process is critical, and the process is the fusion, what we call data fusion, but is the reclamation of the data from all the existing systems. You have to have a base of data that has been pre-processed and purified as much as possible for mathematics to have a good chance of operating on top of it. Our technique, then we use a thing called response score, which is our hybrid model, which is a unique combination of neural networks, which do have some inherent problems, genetic algorithms, and inference processing. So we have a technique that pulls from all of those. Then once that has created some scores and some other pieces, then the process goes on to figure out how to use those and communicate those to people as individuals or segments of one to elicit the kind of responses that we want to elicit.
Okay, now these technologies being neural network, genetic algorithms and so on, how do they help in the search for both the incriminating circumstances as well as the mitigation, the extenuation, exoneration that we're looking for when we're trying to identify non-compliance?
Well, unlike, again, the traditional statistics, where a statistician has to build the variables in and work with the information, the response score or scoring technique, we feed all the information that's in all the files into the mathematical technique. It then will figure out which of these variables that are important. So you have the sum total of your wealth of knowledge is going into this black mathematical box, and it's making the determination. So what we've done is we've moved the intelligence from the statistician into the computer where it belongs, so that it can figure it out on its own.
What is the output?
The output is a set of scores. We thought about this and tried to make it as simple as we could. We come up with a score between 0 and 999, where 999 is the highest probability of the behavior that we're seeking, whether that be tax avoidance or likelihood to buy or likelihood to quit using, say, a credit card. 0 being the lowest probability of something happening or figure of merit. And the idea is to be able to sort those in order and deal with the top ones first and maybe develop some cutoffs or segments based on those numbers.
Okay, so perhaps I could ask you to kind of to reiterate that perhaps. How would that help tax authorities specifically, say, who has limited audit or investigation case capacity?
Well, that's exactly one of the problems that we're trying to solve. Phil Kotler at Northwestern University calls us the more for less society. Every year we need more results, but we get 75% less resources, less people, less money, but yet we have to keep our output up or higher. What a response score does, or what the scoring technique does, because you have an ordering between 0 and 999, if you only have the funds to audit 2,000 cases, you take the 2,000 with the highest number associated with it and just work on those. And the good news about that also is there are a lot of people who you would unnecessarily audit, and I hate to use the word harass, but you would bring them to great discomfort, if you will. And so you avoid that, and at the same time you increase your yield or your margin, and you become a very efficient organization.
Is this difficult to use? How
Yeah, that, again, the scores were the simplest thing that we could come up with to empower people to use them of virtually any intellectual level. Again, going back to the statistical cases, there are reams and reams of single variable distributions and t-tests and all kinds of graphs, charts, and whatever, and then the human being has to take all that and analyze it and figure out, what do I do next and where do I create my segments. The scores are very simple to use. 999 is the behavior you're looking for, 0 is not, and then there is some distribution between the two.
What degree of accuracy could be expected out of this type of approach?
Over most of the traditional mathematics that we've been involved with today, which includes linear regression, the multivariates, the stepwise multivariates, the shades, the automatic interaction detection systems, all of those techniques, we normally get about a 20 to 25% improvement over traditional statistics, just because of what we call the high nonlinearity or the robustness of the mathematics.
Thank you.
Okay.
Artificial intelligence in this context.
Well, we were looking for a method to better identify direct response marketing purchasers and to eliminate non-responders in our direct mail business. we were also very interested in being able to predict other types of sales and marketing behavior, such as credit card usage and some other ones. So we tried most of the other traditional mathematics, and we were looking for a higher level that could deal with the kind of data sets we have today.
Why are, say, neural networks, artificial intelligence, the preferred mechanism for analyzing client data specifically?
Well, client data it normally has a lot of imperfections in it. The quality of the data is not as good it's not perfect, and there are a lot of fields or a lot of holes in the data. And again, we were looking for something that could deal with these massively large data sets that were imperfect. Traditional statistics and the statistical variance require a fairly good data set, so it's fairly unforgiving of the data. Also, the statistics required a statistician which knew which of the 1,000 techniques to apply at the right time, at the right place, transfer functions, all of that, and had to be fairly intimate with the data. The techniques that we're using today, which calls from neural networks, genetic algorithms, inference technology, Bayesian filtering, and some of the other areas, does not require a statistician and is very unforgiving of the holes. And at the same time is highly nonlinear, giving us a better solution and calls from the computers and the technology that we use today. So it's a today solution. Statistics actually, back in the 1800s, most of it was invented.
How more specifically does this compare to the traditional operations research techniques that you're referring to?
Well, our technique requires nothing more than a lot of data that is somewhat pre-processed and purified, and we can then feed into it all the different inputs of information and let the computer do the work. So the operational research techniques today, the intelligence is in the individual, whereas what we're doing today is the mathematics is driven by the computer, so the computer does the work for us, so the intelligence is in the algorithms.
And the process, as I understand it, is important. How does the CPM process take advantage of this artificial intelligence capability specifically? How much of the process is significant in the application?
Well, the CPM process is really a tactical communications process. And one of the components of it is the response scoring or AI algorithms. But it starts out with a thing we call data fusion, which is the extraction and mining and reclamation of all the data that exists in all the legacy systems into one homogeneous database that can then be acted upon by the response score module to predict behavior in terms of tax compliance. But then it has to be carried on further. Then we then move it on to a communication system that allows us to communicate the message and tactically create a response or the action that we're looking for. I kind of draw the line between strategy and tactics. To me, strategy is like fighting war on paper, but tactics is like going out into the field and winning the war. And what information should be is not just strategic, but it needs to be tactical. You need not to build a plan, but you need to drive that in and get the responses that we're looking for. In this case, it would be tax compliance.
So how does this artificial intelligence capability help in the search for incriminating circumstances and, in addition, the mitigating or extenuating, exonerating circumstances that we're looking for?
Well, again, the intelligence is in the software, not in the individual. So what we seek to do is when we fuse the data together, we take every piece of information that we can build together into one common database. All of that information is fed into the response score module. Response score then figures out what is the difference between the mitigating circumstances and the other activities, and it makes a prediction. It figures out what's important and will develop a unique model based on every behavior that we seek to predict.
What is the output then? What's it look like?
The output of response score is a figure of merit. It is a number between 0 and 999. Where 999 is the highest probability of that behavior occurring, 0 being none or as low as possible, and then some scaling between the two. So it's very, very simple.
And how would that help a government agency had limited audit or investigation case capacity?
Well, that's the case today, is that every organization, whether it be governmental or business, never has enough money. Phil Kotler calls us the more for less society. Every year we get 75% less money, but they need 125% more results. And so whether it be marketing or tax compliance, we're looking for an optimization. And what ResponseScore does is allows, if you had only enough money to audit 2,000 people, what you would do is you would start at the top of the score and you would work down 2,000 people, and you would have your highest preponderance of folks that were not complying with the taxes. But also I think there's a good byproduct in that, and I think we all have a social responsibility, and that social responsibility is not to bother people or inflict a negative behavior on people who are maybe not tax avoiders. So our ability to filter those out of the compliance increases our social responsibility, and at the same time makes us more money per unit of money we put back into the process.
How difficult is this environment to use?
Well, unlike what you do with statistics, you've got piles and piles of paper all over, and you have to analyze all these single variable distributions and t-tests and whatever. ResponseScore is a number between 999 and 0. And almost everybody can understand that 999 is a lot bigger than 0. So the concept is to provide or empower people with a very simple technique, although that simple technique is derived from the most powerful mathematics that exists today.
Is it accurate? What degree of accuracy can be expected?
Over the traditional statistics today, the ResponseScore technique is significantly more accurate than statistics. We've tried it against linear regressions, the multivariate, all kinds of models that were built, CHADE models, automatic interaction detection models. We almost always get a 20 to 25% improvement in performance over traditional statistics, and that's because of it's more forgiving of the quality of data, and also because of its highly non-linearity, which means it kind of fits these complex problems a little better.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
We're recording the right side. Does that not? There is kind of a line there. Using or selecting segmentation as a tool.
Sure. Well, there are a couple of basic categories of reasons. One is to better manage their current operations in order to accomplish some serious goals that they may have. They want to manage their existing programs more efficiently. They want to allocate the resources more effectively. And they want to match the instrument to the client segment better, so that they can do a better job of responding to the needs and the opportunities in that client segment.
So what are the techniques then?
We're recording.
Jeff, incidentally, I meant to ask, are you picking up the shadows of my writing?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay. And if you could just try and keep in mind that thing there in front of you. Forget that I'm asking the question, kind of just start.
Use it as a probe.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
What are the reasons for engaging in segmentation? What would an organisation, what kind of circumstances would an organisation be facing in order to consider this?
Well, there typically are two reasons why organizations would consider segmentation. The first being that they want to improve their current operations. They may, for example...
We've got the machines going.
Yeah, I was afraid they would be coming back. Okay, should I just start? Okay. There are probably two good reasons why organizations would want to employ segmentation. The first has to do with their current operations. They may want, for example, to do a better job of managing their existing programs. They may decide that there are pools of clients whom they are not managing well. They may not be allocating the resources properly. They may not be matching their existing programs to the client bases well. So just simply as a way to improve their existing operations, segmentation is a good procedure. The second reason is that they may wish to engage in segmentation in order to develop new programs that will do an especially good job of meeting the needs of specific clients.
What are the techniques that are used for segmentation?
Segmentation has a fairly recent history, but there is already a variety of techniques for doing it. Classically, there are two approaches. One of them is called CHADE analysis, or a whole category of analyses called automatic interaction detection. These are procedures for trying to find variables which do a good job of maximally differentiating clients. Second class of techniques is called cluster analysis, and that's a procedure for trying to find groups of clients that are homogeneous together, but heterogeneous between groups. In other words, where are the existing pools of clients that are very, very similar to each other on a whole variety of dimensions, but very different from other clusters of clients, and that's cluster analysis.
What about discriminant analysis? That's probably what we're talking about, but is there another way of describing discriminant analysis? And could you give an example?
Discriminant analysis is probably one of the best understood and perhaps one of the least used statistical techniques out there. It's a fascinating procedure. It's a process for deciding what is the best way to discriminate between existing defined categories of clients. It assumes that there are two or more clusters or groups of clients out there, and it reports back to you what are the variables that are effective in discriminating between or among these various groups. It is a process that gives you three things. Those who employ it have the benefit of three things. First, it tells you what are the primary factors that discriminate between or among the various groups that you have. So you can learn, for example, that some factors are significant in discriminating between groups, and others, while they seem to be important, really are not. The second thing discriminant analysis does is that it gives you a formula which allows you to predict group membership based upon existing data that you have. So just based upon the data that's available to you right now, you can predict whether a person belongs in one segment or another. And the third thing is a little bit more subtle, but it is really quite a powerful advantage of discriminant analysis. Discriminant analysis will also, if you use it properly, it will tell you what the probability is that an individual belongs in one segment or another. So, to use an example, if you were to employ discriminant analysis as a way to differentiate between those who comply in their tax audits and those who are willfully non-compliant, discriminant analysis can do those three things for you. It can tell you what are the variables that help you distinguish between compliant and non-compliant cases. It can give you a formula to allow you to predict whether a particular individual is going to be a compliant or a non-compliant individual. And finally, it can tell you quite precisely the probability that an individual belongs to the compliant or to the non-compliant group. And that's a very powerful procedure, as you can imagine.
I think we've skipped through. You've actually covered most of the answers to the questions that I posed. Is there any covered what can discriminant analysis do? Can you give a hypothetical example of done both of those things?
I could talk about the lie detection example, which is kind of fun. Okay. Another example where discriminant analysis is being very successfully employed is in the case of lie detection. Lie detection is a perfect case where you have two defined groups, those who are being truthful and those who are being deceptive. In a court of law, the court is trying to decide which group a person belongs to. And using physiological evidence, you can discover that there are very powerful physiological differences that distinguish between truthful people and deceptive people. What is interesting is that discriminant analysis will tell you not only that there are profound differences, it'll also tell you what the formula is for allocating an individual to one group or another, and it will tell you very precisely the probability that a person belongs to one group, the truthful, or another group, the deceptive. And so it's quite powerful for a court of law to know that a particular individual, having taken a polygraph test, showed a pattern of responses which would be given by a truthful person less than 1 in a million. that tells the court something that's very, very powerful. So that's another good example of how you might use discriminant analysis to solve an important social problem.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Wasn't anything else?
Take one. One thing I didn't say, which I wanted to, was I talked about the historical procedures for cluster analysis. I didn't make the lead-in to the newer techniques, but you might want to do that in
Being
neural networks and genetic algorithms.
It's very much up to you as to whether you want to do that. I don't think that will be necessary.
Okay.
Okay, so let's just go straight to the top.
Sure.
Well, what are the reasons for engaging in segmentation, and what are the kind of benefits that people accrue?
Sure. Organizations, governments, and ministries employ segmentation for a variety of reasons, but we could separate them very simply into improving their management of existing programs and engaging in new programs. For example, ministries may decide that they are not properly allocating their resources. They may decide that there are client groups that are being underserved. They may decide that they could do a better job of targeting specific client groups if they were to have specific programs for those groups. In order to do that, they need to know how the clients are clustered together, and that's what segmentation does. It finds groups of clients that are very similar to each other and different from other clients.
What other techniques do you use for segmenting clients?
In order to do segmentation effectively, there are a variety of methodological approaches that are used. The most common, historically, have been aid analysis or CHAID analysis, which involves sequentially stepping through the data, looking for those variables that maximally discriminate between the client base. And the second procedure is to take all of the data together and use a process called cluster analysis to find those aggregations of clients which hang together, which are homogeneous within their cluster and heterogeneous or different between clusters. Those have historically been the procedures that have been used. There are new techniques that are on the horizon right now.
What about discriminant analysis? What is that specifically, and can you give an example?
Sure. Discriminant analysis is one of the most interesting procedures that has come out of multivariate statistical analysis in the last 30 or 40 years. It's really a technique based upon linear regression, something that's familiar to most college students, but it's a very powerful procedure. It's a way to develop a process for effectively discriminating between existing groups of people. For example, discriminant analysis has been very, very effective in the development of polygraph tests that work. A polygraph or lie detector test assumes that there are two groups of people who are truthful and people who are being deceptive. Discriminant analysis is a good way for identifying the variables on which those two groups differ and applying a process for categorizing a new individual as to whether that person comes from the truthful or the deceptive group. Let me explain how discriminant analysis works for a minute. There are three things that you get out of discriminant analysis. One thing you get out of it, of course, is the knowledge of which variables help to discriminate between the categories. So, for example, to use an IRS example, or an internal revenue or taxation example, there may be multiple groups of people who vary in terms of their likelihood of compliance. If we take compliant versus non-compliant individuals and separate them as much as we can, we find that there are some variables, some factors that they profoundly differ on. In other cases, they don't differ. Clearly, we would want to direct our attention to those factors that people that help to discriminate between people. The second thing discriminant analysis does is that it gives you a formula for deciding on group membership based upon existent data that are available to you. So, for example, you could take a person's age, a person's income, and a variety of other demographic factors and factors related to their taxation status, put it through a procedure, and come out with a decision as to whether a person is being compliant or non-compliant, a prediction, if you will. And the third thing that discriminant analysis gives you is that it gives you a very solid basis on which to make that categorization, a probability, if you will, that a person is being compliant or non-compliant. And you can then report that probability in as fine a precision as you like. If you like, you can make a decision about compliance based upon a person's being greater than 0.999 in one category or another.
This is a new question. We're talking about binomial instances, I guess, or two groups, but I guess you could actually use it to identify membership in any one of a number of groups and then select the appropriate instrument for addressing that particular group. Would that be correct?
Exactly. Discriminant analysis in the two-group case just asks you to separate people into two groups. In other cases, there are multiple groups where there are multiple segments out there of different clients, and Ministry may have several instruments directed toward different segments. Discriminant analysis then, in that multiple group case, can tell you which instruments to apply to which segments.
Could you give a hypothetical example? Could you do that?
I think we've covered that.
Okay. Brad, how did we do for... did I get everything? Did you...
I think
stay wide only for a short amount of time, and then we're going and close for the second, so we can pause between the first and second.
Okay, I'm ready whenever you are.
All right. On the machine.
It's up and running.
Great. David, what are decision support systems? How would you characterise a decision support system?
Decision support systems can be characterised as executive information systems, data extract and conditioning systems, even analysis and inquiry systems. And today it should really be characterised as decision enabling systems. And what I mean by that is the ability for knowledge workers within the enterprise, buyers, sellers, people who interact with clients, to be able to mine or extract the information out of the enterprise, and there's typically a vast amount of enterprise, to the benefit of the strategic goals of that particular organisation.
Why detailed data versus data in summary that would be, for example, delivered by traditional operational systems?
I haven't got my mindset to that question.
Oh, okay. So you want to do another run?
Yeah, I'm saying
you need to do a second take. I'm going to use that. Absolutely.
Okay. What are we going to do? Detailed data versus summary?
Detailed data versus summary, yeah. So,
okay, can you similarly cheat sheet me on two? Sorry, is this okay, or is okay? Yeah. Access in unlimited manner.
Access in unlimited manner?
Access in an unlimited manner.
Data in summary, such as might be delivered by an operation, the present operational system.
Yeah. Traditional mainframes have provided either batch or report.
We're rolling.
Okay. So, David, why detailed data versus data in summary, such as might be delivered by traditional operational systems?
Well, traditional mainframe systems have provided information to their end users, typically in a batch mode or reporting mode, or very simply structured queries. Many businesses today are requiring access to the detailed data to enable its knowledge workers to better understand its clients and the products that they sell or service.
I knew that was sorry. I was thinking, oh, we need when you want me to switch to move it, just go away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sort of. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. David, why data in detail? Why not data in summary, such as might be provided by a traditional operational system?
Traditional operating system. Let's start.
Just
traditional system. Let's start again. Traditional mainframe systems have provided to their end users information in either reporting, batch reporting form, or in simple inquiries, structured queries. Today, many organisations are finding that their knowledge workers need access to the detailed information to better understand their products and to better understand the clients that they're attempting to service. Oh, okay. Let's go and do it again. I'm ready. Ready. Ask the question. Please.
David, why data in detail? Why not the kind of summary data that we're used to seeing coming out of operational systems?
Traditional operational systems, mainframes, have provided reports or batch reporting to the users, or very simple structured queries. Many businesses today are... okay, we'll start again.
Sure. David, why detailed data versus the summary data that we're used to seeing coming out of traditional operational systems?
The traditional mainframe systems have provided information in a batch reporting form or in structured queries. Many businesses today are realising the value of detailed data to enable its knowledge workers to better understand the products it's selling, the service it's delivering, and the clients to which it's marketing those products. For those knowledge workers to realise the real benefit of that data, they need unlimited access to the detailed information and in the manner that they require. They wish to be able to extract the data, to take different views or models of the information. They want to be able to do this without the layers of analysts or programmers between them and the data.
Perfect.
We're rolling.
We've heard a lot about parallelism or massively parallel computers. What is this?
Let me address the first part of parallelism. Parallelism involves the concurrent but independent operation of microprocessors against the single data store. By operating in parallel, we not only have the efficiency of multiple systems operating in parallel to extract and process the data, but we also are able to do this on a platform of microprocessor systems, which makes it very affordable to expand and have very large data files.
Perfect again.
We're rolling.
So who's getting the benefit of using these kinds of systems?
As implemented with NCR, who in fact is the leader in massively parallel processing in the world today in the commercial marketplace, the very biggest of organisations and some of the medium-sized organisations are realising these benefits. And these cross-section, let's go again.
Who is getting the benefit of these types of systems? Who are implementing these large decision support systems?
Large decision support systems implemented on massively parallel processing today are being implemented by the very largest and the most successful of the world's corporations and organisations. These cross-section all industries. Retailing, such as we have examples with Walmart or Kmart. In the airline industry with Qantas, British Airways, American Airlines. In the financial community with Barclays Bank, with Bank of America. And in the public sector as well, where government departments are anxious to better understand their clients and service their clients. And we see many examples of this in Australia with the Department of Social Security, in New Zealand, in the telecommunications arena, servicing their clients, in the IRS in the US, and Ontario Hydro in Canada.
Done.
We're rolling.
What are decision support systems? How are they different to traditional computer systems?
Decision support systems can be used to describe such things as enterprise information systems or executive information systems, extract and conditioning systems, or even analysis and inquiry systems. But today it really should be characterised as decision enabling systems. The ability to provide knowledge workers within the enterprise, and knowledge workers could be buyers, they could be sellers, they could be people who interface with clients, they could be risk managers, to better understand the business and to be able to undertake strategic decisions that impact the organisation. Did we answer the question?
Yeah. We'll do it one more time if we may. If you could get something about unstructured decisions in there.
That's a good.
Unstructured decisions.
Yes.
That might be useful in some. David, what are decision support systems as defined today?
Decision support systems can be used to describe generally executive information systems, extract and conditioning systems, analysis and inquiry systems, but more appropriately described today as decision enabling systems that enable knowledge workers in the organisation to undertake unstructured queries against the information or database or data warehouse within the organisation, and those decisions that they make to have a strategic impact upon the organisation.
Perfect. That's